What's the story, morning glory? What is the word, hummingbird? Thank you so much for joining me again on my channel and for another review of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 2, Episode 14, What the Fa. So we're starting off with Meredith. We're at her house. Her son Brooks is showing her some new designs, I guess, of his because he's this budding future fashion designer, and Jenny comes over. So Jenny comes over, and then she tells Meredith that her husband, I think Meredith asked her about the whole thing with having the fourth child, if like where they were on that. And Jenny tells Meredith that, well, surrogacy's out of the picture. I'm not going to get pregnant. I don't want to be pregnant again, and we're not going to adopt. So my husband suggested a sister wife. So Meredith is like, kind of shocked about that. And then Lisa comes over. And when Lisa comes over, Jenny repeats the story to Lisa about her husband wanting a sister wife so that he can have more children. And Lisa knows, is his name Dewey, I think? Lisa knows Jenny's husband Dewey pretty well because Lisa and Jenny are friends. So Lisa finds it hard to believe that Dewey would even suggest such a thing. She doesn't really see him doing that. And I don't know if he did that for show or what. It just seems kind of bizarre that he would want to ask his wife for if he can marry another woman to have more children. That just seemed really, really out of left field for him to ask something like that, especially if he knows anything about his own wife. He would have known how she would have taken that. I just didn't get that at all, where that came from. So then they decide to re-outfit Jenny, I guess to spice things up in her marriage. So they have her put on this really, sexy lingerie and a blonde wig, and she's strutting her stuff, and they're taking video of her and all this and that, I guess. And she looked really cute in the blonde wig, so they're all having a good time. So Jen, she is on her way to meet with Lisa. Now, Lisa was supposed to be this really good friend of Jen, but when Jen, was going through her issues, when what hit the fan, Lisa was nowhere to be found. Not a phone call, not a text, not a good morning, how are you, nothing. So finally, after Jen had attempted to reach out to Lisa several times, I don't know how many days later, Lisa finally responds and agrees to meet with Jen. So they meet, and when Lisa showed up, she was dressed super duper casual. She just had like her phone and her keys in her hand or something. It seemed like she just wanted to make this really quick. Like she was just going to get in and get out. She didn't want to spend too much time on this whole this whole Jen thing. So as they're talking, Jen is talking about how she was really disappointed that Lisa basically ignored her and didn't reach out to find out how she was doing, didn't respond to any calls, to any texts. And Lisa was like, I needed time to process all of this. I needed time to process this. And then Lisa starts talking about how she was still not over whatever issues they had before Vail. So before the feds came looking for Jen, whatever issues they had at that time, Lisa said she still wasn't over that. So she needed time to just process everything. And so Jen is like, who cares about what happened before Vail? I mean, I am fighting for my freedom here, and I need my friends around me. And you're trying to bring up stuff that happened, way back when something bigger has happened since then. And it's funny to me how Lisa just kind of turned everything back about her and how she needed time to process, how she wasn't over certain things. And Lisa's just I don't like, what's wrong with this woman? She is not a good friend at all. And if I was Jen, this would have been the last time that I made any attempt to reach out to her. I think Jen did too much. I'm going to give you one call, maybe a text, and then if you don't respond, I'm going to assume that we're through, we're done, and don't talk to me ever again. So Jen did a lot by reaching out to her as much as she did and still agreeing to meet with her, because Lisa just showed what a horrible friend she was. So, Jen kept on saying, you didn't even call to check on me. And I've never seen anyone so self-centered, so selfish, and just a horrible friend. Moving on, Heather. Heather meets with her brother. Her brother lives in Switzerland, has been living in Switzerland with his wife and his kids for about 14 years. And Heather, as we all know, she's left the Mormon church. She has a sister who had been left the Mormon church. And so now her brother was the only one, well, not the only one. I don't know about the other siblings, but her brother, Tyler, he was very, very Mormon. Heather says that the last time that she went to go see her brother, which was recently because she spoke about COVID, the last time that she went to go see her brother in Switzerland, I mean, he was deep, deep in this whole Mormon religion. He had all kinds of Mormon paraphernalia all over his house and the Mormon book and all kinds of stuff. He was deeply Mormon. So when she came back to the States, at some point, her brother decided to leave the Mormon church, and he wrote her this letter. And the reason why he wrote her a letter, I guess, was because what he was about to say was going to be so serious and so profound that it was better for him to write it out in a letter instead of, I guess, calling or texting or emailing. So he writes her this letter, and I'm thinking the letter was him explaining that he had made the decision to leave the Mormon church. And he tells Heather that he felt, after he did his research, I guess, on their founding leader, Joseph Smith, and realized that Joseph Smith was married to a 14-year-old girl. And I guess he probably found some other things about Joseph Smith or about the Mormon religion and Mormon leaders in general that he didn't like. He came to the realization that this wasn't for him. And he was telling Heather that he felt bad that he was raising his children in a cult. He equated Mormonism to a cult. And he said that he feels like he's a horrible parent because he was raising his kids in this particular religion. And then he said something to Heather like, you know, when he wrote the letter, he didn't hear from her. And she said that she was busy trying to process everything herself. You know, she was like, people were coming at her from all different directions, telling her that she was a traitor and why did she leave the church. So she was going through her own thing when the letter got to her. So that's why she didn't respond. And then in her confessional, Heather says that she would have preferred to stay in her bubble and that she grieved the life that she wanted to have. And she doesn't feel any better off after realizing the truth. And she says it's hard to be a hero and a traitor. Heather is a very deep, deep person. Her leaving Mormonism and what she's experiencing about her life after leaving the church, and the things that she says about it and what she says about it and how she expresses it. It makes me feel like, you know, she did not do this like flippantly. It wasn't like, oh yeah, it just wasn't for me, so I left it. I mean, it was like a serious transition in her life for her to leave something that this is all she knew. This is what she grew up in. She cut off relationships with her sister because her sister was no longer a Mormon. I mean, she was deep into this Mormonism, and for her to leave it, I'm pretty sure that it was like, it affected her so deeply. And it was just interesting to hear her talk about her life after leaving the church and what she's gone through psychologically and emotionally, being an ex-Mormon. It's very, very interesting. Yeah, I really like listening to her talk about that. Jen, moving on. Now we're on Jen. So we see Jen. She's at her home with her husband and her kids and some other relatives, and I guess an Islamic leader, I guess, is there as well. They're all praying. It's the last day of Ramadan, and she talks about how Ramadan is a very blessed time of the month for people who follow the Muslim faith. And so they're praying, and then after they're praying, she and her husband go off to another room to have a private conversation. And her husband is telling her that what they're going through is pretty serious, and that they need to talk about how they have to downsize because they need the extra money to pay for these legal fees. And they need to get a smaller home. They need to be more conservative with how they're spending their money because they need a lot of money for these legal fees. And Jen is worried about downsizing. And she says that she says that she is not comfortable with moving into a smaller home. Well, that's not how she phrases it. she doesn't want to leave that particular home, she says, because so many of their relatives, extended family, they see that home as their home as well. Because so many, I guess, a lot of their relatives will come there and crash for a few days or whatever if they need somewhere to stay. So it's like a hub for both of their families. Now, that's a beautiful picture that you're painting, Jen, of why you don't want to leave that particular house. But I can see right through that. I think that she doesn't want to leave that house because she still wants to maintain a certain lifestyle. And she can't see herself living in a smaller, more average sized home. So that's, I think, is a real reason why she doesn't want to leave that house. Not because, oh, this is the hub of our family and this is where people come when they need a place to stay and it's a sense of home for our extended family. Oh, stop it. Stop the crap. No, I think it's because she just doesn't want to live in a regular sized home when all of her friends are living in these huge spacious houses. She's going to go live in in a regular suburb, in a regular neighborhood, in a regular sized home, like a 2,300 square foot home. No, that's not going to work for Jen. So I think that's the real reason why she doesn't want to leave that house. And so another issue that they're having is that she says that she feels like she failed her father and her grandfather because she had, made a promise to them that she was going to take care of the family. And now she's in a position where she really can't do that because her money's going to have to go elsewhere. She also employs several family members. She says she spends about $50,000 a month on payroll for people that she's hired, I guess, from maybe just not her family, but her other employees as well. And, she's thinking about what's going to happen to them. And so the legal fees are like $1 to $2 million. And Cherie says that we're going against, this huge behemoth that is the federal government. It's us against the federal government. And we have to prove that this huge, humongous entity is wrong and we're right. So we need the resources to fight this case. And so, Jen, the way I see it is anything can happen. Jen can be proven completely innocent. Who knows what the court of law is going to say if charges don't get dropped before this has to go to court or whatever. I don't know. But I feel like for it to get to the point where it's at now, where the feds where they basically arrested her, it's not looking good for Jen because the federal government has too much money, too much time, and too much resources to do a shoddy job. This wasn't like an overnight thing. It wasn't like they got an anonymous tip. Hey, Jen Shaw is swindling people out of their money. Y'all need to go check it out. And then they went on a Thursday and arrested her on a Friday. No, it wasn't that. They spent a lot of time, a lot of money watching her, investigating her, observing her. This was not for nothing. So they're going to sit back and they're going to accumulate as much evidence, as much proof, so that, it racks up to like this, that you stole like X amount of money from these people, that you defrauded these people in millions and millions. They're not going to, this was very calculated on the part of the government. They're not wasting their time. They don't do this to lose cases. They're not going to go through all of this with the possibility that they might lose this case. So I don't think it's looking good for Jen. She might not have to go to jail. She might end up copping a plea. And I don't know if the federal government does probation. That might happen. Or she might spend, a month or two in jail. I don't know. But I feel like that she has every right to cry in almost every single scene that she's in. And I think that she needs to be very worried because when the federal government comes after you, they're not coming after you because they got nothing else better to do. There's some serious stuff going on. They're not going to waste their time and their money on stuff where they feel like they're not going to win in court. So Jen says in her confession, this isn't me. The things that I've been accused of, this just isn't me. I don't know Jen, you are someone who likes the nicer things in life. Now, if you were the only woman on this show that was just wearing regular clothes and, Walmart clothes and you were really down to earth, I can probably believe that this isn't you. But you want to live and maintain a certain lifestyle. And for people to do that, when they are competing with the Joneses, they will go to great lengths to maintain a certain certain image. It's very important to them. And Jen seems like someone who wants to maintain a certain image and will do whatever it takes, because what the hell does she do? What do you do for a living? I mean, when people cannot, if it's not clearly defined on what someone does for a living, it's worrisome. It's a little bit Her husband is a coach. Okay, he's a college coach, I believe, but I don't think he's getting paid millions of dollars a year. And I know college coaches can make really good money, but I don't think it's on that level of the lifestyle that she's living. And, she had assistants and employees. That wasn't just on her husband. What was she doing? And it's like, it's never clearly defined on exactly what she does for a living. So it makes you think that maybe, there was like this huge gray area of how she was getting her income. Lisa, she's meeting up with Whitney. She wants to meet with Whitney to kind of talk things over because, they had a huge falling out in Vail. And they're going to do some kind of water yoga in a cave on surfboards. So they meet and they talk about Cameron, and Lisa says that she believes Cameron 100%. Now, Lisa confuses me. I thought Lisa, whenever Mary is in the room, Lisa acts like she's a big supporter of Mary. But then when Mary is not in the room, all of a sudden she's a big supporter of Mary's enemies. So she says that she really supports Cameron, and she believes everything that Cameron says about Mary. And Cameron is saying some very damning things about Mary, that she's, she's making people believe that she's God. She's browbeating her congregation into giving her money to basically maintain her lifestyle. It's not even going to charities or to help the poor. It's just going straight into her bank account. So Cameron is saying some really awful things about Mary, and Lisa is here telling Whitney, yeah, I believe Cameron 100%. So, Whitney then says that she got in touch with Cameron and she reached out to Cameron and had a conversation herself with Cameron. And Lisa didn't like that. And Lisa says that she found it really bizarre that Whitney would reach out to Cameron because, she says Cameron is her friend. She's the one that knows Cameron. So why is Whitney reaching out? Like, why can't one adult reach out to another adult? Like, what are you talking about? And Whitney obviously wants to get to the bottom of what's going on with Mary. She's not going to get it from Lisa. She for sure ain't going to get it from Meredith or Mary. And Lisa was going to Mary's church. I don't know if she went for just that one time, but I got the impression that she had been at least twice to Mary's church. So, I mean, Whitney has every right to want to know what she wants to know about what's going on with Mary. Okay, so in her confessional, Whitney, the producer, asked Whitney if she felt comfortable, because she told Lisa that she had read a lot of things on the internet about Mary, and it wasn't good. And so in her confessional, the producers asked Whitney, well, do you mind telling us what you read? And Whitney refused and says, no, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to put my family in danger. She says that she did read, what she did tell us is that she did read that Mary and her husband were predators, and that Mary and Robert used fear and intimidation on their congregation, basically to make them do what they want, which is making me think to give money. So Lisa says that Mary said, you will go to jail if you mess with my church. And she was referring to Jen Shaw. And Whitney was like, so do you think that Mary has something to do with what's going on with Jen? Like, did Mary tip off the feds? Because I guess Jen was saying things about Mary's church. So yeah, that's interesting. Now we're finally made it to the damn faux lunch. Okay. It was a lot, y'all. It was a lot. What really stuck out to me about the fall lunch was basically, okay, when things got popping, and Whitney got it all popping because Whitney was whispering to, who was sitting next to her? Who was she whispering to? Jen. When she was whispering to Jen something about people being fake, and then Mary overheard and was like, what are you talking about, people being fake? Are you talking about yourself? Because I know you're not talking about. So when it finally got popping and all this stuff was happening and people were they were all telling Jen, they're all talking over each other. They're all trying to tell Jen, it wasn't, I didn't talk about you. I didn't say anything bad about you. This is the one, she said this and she said that. And they're all, I guess they're all letting Jen know what was happening after she left. And after the story broke about her arrest. What really stuck out to me was Mary. I didn't care about the other women and what they said about behind Jen's back and whether Jen knew that. What really stuck out to me was Mary, because Mary is a woman of God. She has a church. She's the leader of this church. She's a pastor. And for her to say to Jen, I didn't say anything bad about you. And then they show a clip of her saying probably the worst things that any one of them had said. I'm just like, how can you tell such a bold-faced lie and you're supposed to be a pastor? Like, how does that happen? She basically said that she believes that Jen is guilty of these allegations. She said that you reap what you sow because she went against Mary. So now she's reaping what she sowed. And she even had said, she alluded to, I'm just like, I just don't understand. Like, what is wrong with Mary? What's wrong with her? Like, did you completely forget the things that you said about Jen and Vale? And I don't think that the other women held her to the fire enough to really let Jen know exactly what Mary said about her. Because Mary is the one that came out and said, I did not say anything bad about you. I was not talking about you. And she clearly was. Were the other women afraid that if they really held Mary to the fire, that Mary would reveal what they actually said about Jen? I didn't get it. I didn't understand that at all. And so, yeah, so that really stood out to me, how she was just bold-faced lying about what was said, what she said about Jen behind her back. Something else. So there was a scene where, like I talked about how when Jenny was at Meredith's house, and she was wearing the lingerie with the blonde wig, and Meredith and Lisa they took a video of her in the lingerie and the blonde wig. And so at the table, at the fall luncheon, they showed Mary the video of Janie in the blonde. Oh, because what's her name? Lisa had complimented Mary's wig and said that, you look really good in blonde. And so then Lisa said, and who else looks good in blonde is Jenny. So then she showed Mary the video or the picture of Jenny in the blonde wig. And Mary looked at it and she was like, yeah, she looks really nice. This is what Mary said, and I quote, I like her slanted eyes. And I'm just like, okay, this is the second time that Mary has said something very problematic regarding race. So she says, yeah, I like her slanted eyes. And in her confessional, Janie said that if it wasn't her event, Mary would have been on the ground. And I'm like, girl, because it was your event, because you were the host and she was insulting you, she still should have been on the ground. You still should have backhanded her and tackled her. Like, what is going on with how is Mary so unaware? Like, what is going on with Mary? Like, what's happening with this woman? It was really, that was really uncalled for her. It was just bad. It was horrible for her to say that. And I'm also surprised that Jenny didn't check her right then and there. Like, excuse me, you like my what? Do you understand how racist and how awful that sounds? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Okay, so what else happened at the luncheon that I thought was of interest? There was a lot of over talking, a lot of arguments, a lot of side conversations. Jen once again proclaims her innocence over and over again. She says, I didn't do these things that they're accusing me of. I don't know why they're accusing me of these things. I don't know what they're talking about. And they were asking me if I knew certain people. I don't know who they were referring to. I don't know these people. And so Mary was like, okay, so you really don't know what's going on? And Jen was like, no, I don't. And Mary's like, so how did they even find you then? So why are they even looking for you? They just picked your name out of the clear blue sky. And Jen is like, I have no idea why they came after me, why they're after me. And you can tell that Mary obviously doubts this. I don't see how Jen doesn't see it. At some point, Jen got really emotional. She got up and she left and she needed a moment to herself. And by this time, Mary had already left the table and she was, off somewhere on a bench or something. I don't know. She was somewhere. So when Jen left the table, she ran into Mary, and Mary was like, trying to comfort her and hold her. And then so the two of them are sitting down at this bench and they're talking. And um as they're talking, Mary says to Jen, I pray to God, they're having this conversation, and I guess Mary's trying to show this fake support. And she says to Jen, I pray to God that you're guilty. Oh, I mean, I pray to God that you're innocent. And if that Freudian slip was not a wake-up call and a red flag to Jen about Mary, I don't know what else she needs to let her know that Mary is a fake friend. I don't know what else she needs. Is Jen in a position in her life where she's just so desperate to have someone around her that she's willing to ignore the red flags? You don't need to be. Jen, I wouldn't be surprised if Mary did call the feds on Jen. I wouldn't be surprised. This woman is like, it's scary to see how two-faced she is. It's so scary and I cannot wait for the reunion. I cannot wait for this reunion because I want to see what Jen's response is going to be when she sees the horrible things that Mary said about her in Vale. I cannot wait for this reunion. And so, like I said, and then there was another scene where Meredith was just so fed up with everything, so she threatens to leave. She's walking away. Lisa comes chasing after her. Lisa's begging her to stay. She's like, you need to stay for me. I'm your friend. Just stay for me. And Meredith is like, no, this is a lot of negative energy, and I've already told you people that I do not want to be at the same event with Jen, so I'm out. And so Lisa's just begging her to say, as a friend, just be there for me. As a friend, be there for me. And I'm thinking to myself, are you really asking her to be there for you when you were not there for Jen at all? So you don't want to be there for Jen because you're so busy processing. As much as you were what the hell are you, a CPU? You were processing for so long and processing so much that you completely abandoned your friend. And as much as she was processing and not being there for Jen, she wants Meredith to go against everything she believes in and be there for her. That was very hypocritical. So they all sit back down again, and and Heather gave like a really nice little speech about showing support for Jen. And once again, Jen has to proclaim her innocence, crying again. And obviously she's trying to build her case on this show, build her case on camera that she's innocent, that she's absolutely clueless about what happened. Jen, the feds are not going to come knocking on your door without evidence, without proof that you're up to something. You might not be the ringleader. Maybe your assistant was the ringleader. What's his name? Stuart? Maybe he was the ringleader of all of this, but you were definitely involved in something at some level. Something. And it's just like with Erica, what's her name? Girardi. She was constantly building her case on the show. And I don't know if, what? This is the thing. If you know that you're facing charges this damn serious, why don't you get off the damn show? Why don't you get off the show? Because you might accidentally say something that's going to incriminate you. They're going to use the footage against you, and you're going to be sitting up there in that courtroom looking like Boo Boo the Fool. Why don't you just get off the show? I don't understand. Does she need the money? Is she on the show because she needs the paycheck, the Bravo paycheck to pay for these lawyers? Her lawyer fees right now are $1 to $2 million. And you're fighting against the federal government. And like I said, they're not coming knocking on your door based on some weak... they have concrete... They were sitting back just watching you. You built the case for them. For as long as they were watching you and investigating you and collecting evidence against you, you built the case for them. So whatever she was doing, whatever fraudulent things she's being accused of doing, I bet when her and Stuart did it the first time, they were like, oh, wow, we did this and got away with it. And they continue to do it. And they're like, oh, we did it again and no one's saying anything. And they continue to do it and continue to do it. And the whole time, the federal government probably locked their eyes on you when you did it the first time. And then they just sat back and watched you do it again and again and again and again until it got to whatever level, whatever dollar amount that they wanted so that they can press the most severe charges against you. Just do right. you might not be able to live in a 10,000 square home or 15,000 square foot home or whatever, but you're going to be able to sleep at night. Why do you want to live in a mansion and you can't even go to sleep, and you're constantly worried about going to jail and losing your freedom and what's going to happen to your kids in a mansion? I'd rather live in a shack and be at peace and have my babies next to me and not worry about no one going to jail, no one getting shot by the feds, none of that stuff. But anyways, that's just me. If you made it this far, I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you so, so, so much. Don't forget to give me a like, to give me a comment, and please subscribe. I will definitely talk to you later. Bye.